His Excellency Mr. Dr. Bandar Hajar to please give his opening remarks and to start off the webinar.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to the webinar discussing the response of the IsDB Group private sector entities to COVID-19. It is indeed an honor for the IsDB to co-organize this virtual event with the Ministry of Economy of the United Arab Emirates. The momentum given to this webinar by the United Arab Emirates, which is a founding member of the IsDB, reaffirms the unique partnership between UAE and IsDB Group. The world is facing a serious health crisis with unprecedented economic and social consequences. The pandemic is causing the biggest economic impacts. Mostly are either least developed or fragile state, will shrink by an average of 2.1% in 2020. Our economically weaker member countries have stretched their healthcare system. Many of them rely on food imports, which means that food security became an issue when borders closed down. Other sectors affected are commodity supply, chain manufacturing, tourism, and remittances. The micro, small, medium enterprises are particularly hard hit. This sector accounts for more than 90% of economic activities and over 50% of the world's jobs. It contributes to more than 40% of the GDP in developing countries. In Muslim countries, micro and small and medium enterprises account for 53.2 enterprises per 1,000 people, which is more than twice the global rate of 25.2 enterprises as per the same metric. Despite these challenges, we still see light at the end of the tunnel. IsDB member countries include many of the world's fastest growing economy. They, when combined, represent the purchasing power of almost 1/4 of the world's population. The joint GDP of the IsDB member countries amount to roughly $7 trillion, with their annual GDP growth rate standing at 8%. IsDB member economies have much potential to further increase the market share in the global economy and turn these immediate challenges into opportunities for growth. To that effect, the IsDB Group is shifting from rapidly into business model focusing on competitive industries in our member countries that have highest potential to diversify export, create middle to high income jobs, and catalyze foreign direct investment. To realize this opportunity, the IsDB Group mobilized a global network of public, private, philanthropy, and people partnership, what is known as 5 Ps. Money is not the issue, as there is over $200 trillion in the global markets. The challenge is to create the incentives to catalyze and crowd in this investment and align 5 Ps together, since government and MDBs cannot create the jobs, or reduce deficit alone. To that effect, the IsDB group has taken the following concrete step to materialize the 5 Ps through innovative global coordination platform, leading the way to the 4th generation of development. First, IsDB delivered emergency financing of $730 million for health and food security, managed by the Islamic Trade Finance Corporation, ITFC, to implement project using IsDB Group innovative blockchain-based platform to ensure transparency and track delivery. In addition, ITFC repurposed $300 million to support food security and medical preparedness. The Islamic Corporation for Insurance of Investment and Export Credit, ISIC, $150 million COVID-19 response package provided credit and political risk insurance to sustain import of critical goods as well as investment production. Second, IsDB Group established lines of finance to support trade and SMEs to preserve jobs in the core competitive sectors of member countries. To that effect, the Islamic Corporation for the Development of the Private Sector, ICD, has set up a dedicated $250 million response package to aid SMEs and the private sector in affected countries. In addition, IsDB Group is creating a global insurance guarantee facility that aims to crowd in an estimated $2 billion worth of funding from the capital market at the pilot stage. Third, IsDB Group has completed 4 global reports on the global value chain of 4 industries with the aim of creating a feasible pathway of re-globalization to make it more resilient and inclusive. To that effect, joint work rooms are being set up with our member countries to help repurpose their national development plan by studying disruption that happened in the relevant global value chain in both supply and demand. The objective is to help them sustain current areas of comparative advantage and capture new ones. And we have also established government IsDB joint venture facility that create projects at the nexus of high profitability, investment grade risk level, and long-lasting development impact. Fourth, in the public sector, as 2020 shared of the head of the MDB's meeting, we have also coordinated the MDB's global response in short-term emergency health sector financing, private sector lines of finance, and accelerated infrastructure PPP investment financing, and unconventional financing. Furthermore, IsDB Group has coordinated the joint commitment of the Arab Coordination Group $10 billion response to COVID-19. Finally, the 5 Ps network goes far beyond financing into knowledge, capacity development by philanthropic organizations such as International Federation of Red Crescent and Cross, IFRC, which operates through 190 legal NGOs, Pasteur Institute, which is leveraging its previous expertise with Ebola to give training to many of our countries, and many other players that are offering their services through our global coordination platform on cost recovery basis. This is further augmented with support from several UN agencies, including UNDP and UNICEF, that are also supporting procurement of medical supplies through the said platform. The CEO of the ISDB Group's private sector entities will also share with us more details in later program. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the ISDB Group private sector entities, ISIC, ICD, ITFC, through the ISDB Group Business Forum, THECA, and the Ministry of Economy and AIM have teamed up to launch 3 online initiatives that I am happy to share with you today. First, digital country presentation. The second, cheer up virtual pitch competition. Third, made in series. This first of their kind initiative aims to provide innovative solutions, allowing for sustained flow of investment and trade into and between OIC member countries. They put digital innovation in the service of development, ultimately contributing to achieving the SDG. Going forward, both parties will soon sign a memorandum of understanding to put the initiatives into motion. We hope this cooperation will help increase foreign direct investment inflows into our member countries by more than $100 billion, which $50 billion will come in the form of intra-OIC investment. I believe we can turn the COVID-19 pandemic into an opportunity to rethink development and what governments are for, rather than simply fixing market failure when they arise. I see the initiatives we are launching today as a step in that direction. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency, for those wonderful words and for all the initiatives which are being launched by ISDB Group. We thank you so much for your speech. The OIC and the ISDB exist for and about their member countries, which is why it's an immense honor to introduce Her Excellency Ms. Naveen Gama, Minister of Trade and Industry of the Arab Republic of Egypt, to give a short keynote address.
Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I would like to express my pleasure to participate in the webinar organized by ISDB Group Private Sector on action response to COVID-19. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to His Excellency Dr. Bandar Hajar, President of the Islamic Development Bank Group, for the kind invitation to participate in this webinar. And I would like to welcome the research panelists and guests. The world has witnessed and is still living the consequences of the novel coronavirus pandemic that affected all aspects of life. The Egyptian economy was impacted by the implementation of this series. Alike all countries worldwide, each country has its case operated according to its economic events. The series has led to a well-observed distribution in the international trade and the global supply chain, and due to the involvement of the Egyptian trade and industry in this global supply chain through forward and backward relations, we could observe some effect on the industrial sector level, especially the transformation industry. However, we see this challenge as a big chance to deepen some industry local and import replacement of some manufacturing intensive goods. I would like to highlight on the ancient economic reform program that was adopted by the Egyptian government through the past few years, in combination with the International Monetary Fund, where the positive macroeconomic outcome of this program started to reveal just before the pandemic series. And we can assure that sticking to this program was one of the main reasons of the capacity of Egypt's economy to face the channels of this series. The presidential directives were clear to support the economic and production unit through enabling various forms of support in allocating the quantity necessary for production without laying off. Together with taking all the protective measures for citizens and workers. In the meaning, the government took immediate action regarding the lowering prices of natural gas, electricity, and postponing the payment of credit and the real estate tax for industry. There will be also support directed to financing the information and technology sector for its important role in the near future, for example, e-commerce platforms. The government also was aware about securing the national needs and took temporary measures to secure the domestic needs of essential foodstuff and medical equipment. At the time of this series, the role of the multi-financial institution becomes of a great importance in cooperation with government to support the private sector in facing the challenge. And from this point of view, the Egyptian government has placed cooperation with many regional and multilateral development banks, and many programs are being executed to support the private sector. I will highlight the regional mutual cooperation between Egypt and the Islamic Development Bank and its institution, as Egypt is a founding member of IsDB. The finance that Egypt has received from IsDB and its institution reached $12.8 billion US for 338 projects, in which 281 was contributed in sector of energy, manufacturing, meaning agriculture, service, export and import of strategic goods and education. There is ongoing cooperation between Egypt and IsDB in many forms, as we value the joint cooperation with Islamic Trade Finance Corporation, as its financial operation in Egypt has reached 9.6 billion USD. In addition to extend several initiatives and programs such as the Egyptian contribution in the first phase of IFTA MPD, that is considered as a success story. In addition, Egypt has joined the Arab African Trade Reach MPD that aims to develop trade partnerships between the bank members and the African region, together with other initiatives in process, such as the trade project that gives an important position towards women empowerment and the cotton in Turkey, aiming at raising the equality of the Egyptian cotton in cooperation with UNIDO that will benefit large number of farmers. Worth mentioned that the MOU signed in 2016 between Ministry of Trade and Industry of Egypt and Islamic Corporation for Insurance and Export credit, aiming to execute a program to encourage the small and medium-sized Egyptian exports to export through providing credit insurance against export risk with a lower value in compliance with the Islamic principles. And we are looking forward to activate this MOU in light of the package devised by the institution as a response to COVID-19 series. At the end of my speech, I would like to reserve my thanks and for the kind invitation to participate in this webinar, and I am confident that the conversation and extension of ideas and view will definitely support the joint effort to face this series and we are looking forward for it to pass perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Minister Naveen Gama, for this wonderful speech and speaking about the initiatives which are launched by Egypt and how you have been coordinating with ISDB and performing these initiatives. And now it's my pleasure to invite His Excellency Juma Al Khaith, Assistant Under Secretary, UAE Ministry of Economy, to give his opening remarks.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope you can see me and hear me clearly. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to all of you. On behalf of His Excellency Abdullah bin Tawq al-Marri, the newly appointed UAE Minister of Economy, as of yesterday, I'm privileged to convey his sincere greeting and gratitude for your presence at today's webinar. I welcome all attendees from the Islamic Development Bank members countries to this virtual session. As you all know, we have gathered here today to witness the launch of the new online initiative by the Islamic Development Bank private sector entities and annual investment meeting, and discuss the challenges encountered by the private sector and the global economy as the result of the COVID-19 outbreak. The impending launch of this virtual platform here today to display investment opportunities for the Islamic Development Bank member states and to enable communication with potential investors and financiers from around the world is to play a significant role in driving the economic recoveries for these nations. The platform will achieve this by utilizing the potential of AIM Relations Network to add tremendous value to the inflow of foreign direct investment to the Islamic Development Bank group countries. The UAE has always been part of joint initiatives organized by the Islamic Development Bank and continues to contribute to the success of the bank's projects and programs in the group's members countries. The contribution of the UAE to the accumulated capital of the Islamic Development Bank, which amounted to about $69.5 billion as of the end of 2019, stands at 7.5%. The UAE ranked 5th among the 57 member countries in terms of its contribution to the bank's capital and held 379,949 of its share as of December 2019. Meanwhile, the total funding for 75 Emirati projects, including 17 active ones, amounted to about $1.2 billion. Out of these, 58 have been completed. These projects are in the sectors of industries and mining, IT and telecommunication, health and social services, energy, finance, agriculture, education, transportation, trade and real estate. Ladies and gentlemen, given the integral role played by the private sector in driving our economic growth, we consider it our primary responsibility to equip the business sector, particularly small and medium enterprises, with all necessary resources and skills they need to address the challenges brought about by the pandemic situation and resume growth. The total value of support and stimulus plan launched by the UAE government to combat the pandemic crisis currently amounted to 282 billion dirham. In addition, the federal and local governments in all emirates of the country launched more than 227 incentives over the past 3 months to support the business sector during these difficult times. Additionally, a temporary committee was also set up to deal with the negative effect of the COVID-19 crisis on the national economy. Ladies and gentlemen, apart from launching strategic measures to facilitate economic recovery within the country, the UAE remains equally keen to assist the ISDB group member states in reviving their economies through building promising trade and investment partnerships. it is against this backdrop that we are launching 3 initiatives here today through the AIM platform. These are, as mentioned by his country's presentation initiative aimed at promoting and displaying investment and trade opportunities in the Organization of Islamic Cooperation member countries. The Made in Series, which is an open digital platform to SMEs to showcase their locally made products, projects, and services before different countries of the world. And the Startup Pitch Competition, which connects and supports startups globally and helps them meet potential local, regional, and international investors. There is no doubt that this initiative comes at the most opportune time, and I have absolute faith in its ability to accelerate economic recovery and lead us to the post-COVID era of sustained growth and development. Thank you very much.
I would like to present the online initiatives which have been done by ISDBG Group and AIM as well as the Ministry of Economy.
With the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic globally, our realities have changed overnight, and economies are facing a new landscape. In light of these events, the Islamic Development Bank Group private sector entities are partnering with the UAE Ministry of Economy and the annual investment meeting to deliver crucial online initiatives to propel new ideas to the forefront. These online initiatives are the first of their kind, designed to provide the necessary solutions and allow the ongoing flow for investment and trade opportunities in OIC member countries despite the effects of the virus. The first initiative is the Digital Country Presentation, which is a critical virtual gathering for investors, government agencies, private corporations, financial institutions, and investment promotion agencies, which will allow OIC member countries to promote their investment and trade opportunities. The second initiative is Made In Series, which will serve as a digital platform for SMEs to present their industry projects, products, and services aimed at achieving economic growth and increasing countries' exports while securing funding for their projects. The third initiative is the Startups Virtual Pitch Competition, which is a virtual landscape for startups to shine, connect, network, and explore global market penetration. Such initiatives are crucial for providing economic relief during this challenging time due to COVID-19. The initiatives carry mutually beneficial opportunities for all involved. The Islamic Development Bank Group will support its member countries by developing their investment and trade capabilities, connect with new partners, enhance South-South cooperation, share experience, and co-financing developmental projects. While OIC member countries will be able to improve their economies and seek out necessary channels to secure jobs and increase their GDP. Finally, the Islamic Development Bank Group private sector entities, ISEC, ICD, and ITFC, through its business forum, FICA, and the annual investment meeting, will be able to increase foreign direct investment, FDI, by promoting and showcasing cross-border investment among OIC member countries, which expects to exceed $100 billion FDI inflows. Despite the challenges brought by the coronavirus, our ingenuity coupled with our humanity are key elements in ensuring our survival and success in the face of uncertainty. Look forward, knowing that together we are stronger.
I would like to move on ahead with the panel discussion. I would like to invite all the panel members to please come up on stage. I would like to invite Mr. Osama Kaisi, Chief Executive Officer of the Islamic Corporation for Insurance of Investment and Export Credit, Engineer Hani Salem Symbol, Chief Executive Officer, International Islamic Trade Finance Corporation, Mr. Ayman Sijini, Chief Executive Officer, Islamic Corporation for the Development of the Private Sector, and to share his perspective, Dr. Abdul Wahab Al Saldoon, B20 Sherpa, and Secretary General of GPCA. I would like to welcome you all to this webinar. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I'll just wait for Dr. Abdul Wahab Al Saldoon. Dr. Abdul Wahab Al Saldoon, I request you to please join us on stage. Now, moving ahead, Mr. Casey, I would like to ask you. You have a US $150 million COVID-19 response package. Can you please describe what you aim to achieve with the program and how COVID-19 has affected your underlying risk assessment criteria? What are the fundamentals to insurance schemes? Mr. Casey.
Thank you, Prashant. Do you hear me?
I hear you clearly, Mr. Casey.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. The COVID-19 pandemic is having a severe negative impact on the global economy, with up to 32% drop in global trade as per the World Trade Organization. And the FDI is projected by UNCTAD to decline by 40% due to the COVID-19 pandemic. According to recent statistics from the IMF, the global GDP is projected to contract sharply by 4.9% in 2020, and with a cumulative loss of $12 trillion that is projected for 2020 and 2021. Recession is expected to be deeper and recovery will be slower, depending on the longevity and severity of the pandemic affecting ISEC operates. The challenge facing the global business community revolves around the uncertainty about COVID-19 in terms of the scale and geography, how long and widespread shall measure economic recovery. ISEC, as a multilateral institution, faces the additional challenge of balancing the prudent management of our own balance sheet in the face of the crises with the responsibility to support our member countries that rely on our assistance. These responsibilities are intrinsic to the business model of ISEC and explains why we are afforded superior treatment and superior seniority treatment by our shareholders in times of financial distress through so-called preferred creditor status. ISEC is involved in political risk and trade insurance and must address challenges and mitigate exposure specific to activities arising from the impact of the pandemic. The short-term nature of the trade credit and its intimate connection to the state of the world trade means that crisis management requires very active decision-making and swift decision-making, coupled with the possibility that sovereign credit quality will deteriorate, complicating the assessment of political risk insurance just at a time when the demand may be at its height. The pandemic has had an immediate and severe impact on global trade, as the necessary public health has quickly become a threat to the global economy by putting many national economies and their businesses under acute pressure. This low demand translates into affected businesses having to reduce their production capacity, which leads to overall low exports. The pandemic has had an immediate and severe impact on global trade, and this is where national economy are being impacted heavily from both the supply and demand perspective. At an aggregated scale, the shock on both the supply and the demand side is anticipated to lead to a significant reduction in the overall export, which in turn reduces government revenues. These residual effects of the pandemic can be felt everywhere. ISEC's exposure is impacted by the crisis, as many of our member countries and operating markets are facing a multi-layered crisis. They are comprising of health shock, domestic economic disruptions, a plummeting external demand, capital flow reversals, a collapse in commodity prices, and last but not least, coupled with rising debt service. What is the role of ISEC in this environment, and how is ISEC responding? In its role as a trade and investment facilitator, ISEC is witnessing firsthand the extraordinary pressure that this crisis is putting on exporters and investors, and specifically on small to medium enterprises. These harsh conditions impacting the global economy are only worsened by the tightening of the export credit market. While this disruption to global trade and investment flows is unavoidable, it is essential that institutions with the mandate and means to stabilize the trade and investment ecosystem during the crisis do so while planning strategically. Given this context, there's a strong opportunity for government-backed and multilateral export credit and investment insurance providers, such as ISEC, to step up the relief efforts that they are providing to their member countries. For example, as a risk mitigation tool, credit insurance in itself is designed to support the trade through challenging environments by helping to manage risk and liquidity. ISEC is taking a balanced approach to continue supporting member countries in combating COVID-19, while also maintaining portfolio viability and financial sustainability. There are a number of initiatives we are working on with Islamic Development Bank Group and with other multilateral institutions. As part of the IsDB Group's $2.3 billion strategic preparedness and response package, ISEC has earmarked an initial amount of $150 million to ensure COVID-19 related imports and trade finance in member countries. Slightly over $100 million thus far has been allocated to various short-term trade transactions for the import of medical equipment, essential foods, and energy commodity. A number of our member countries have thus far benefited from the pledge, namely Tunisia, Burkina Faso, Senegal, Mauritania, Cameroon, United Arab Emirates, Oman, Jordan, Egypt, and Pakistan. In addition, the corporation has contributed to a number of relevant strategic projects, providing €143 million cover to the construction of 2 new hospitals and 5 new medical units in existing hospitals in West Africa. And as of recently, we have extended a $2.3 million coverage towards upgrade of hospitals across Punjab and Pakistan. ISEC will continue working with local governments and suppliers to address the urgent need for pharmaceuticals, healthcare, supplies, and agricultural commodities, among other essential products. Among the initiatives within IDB Group, which they were touched about by His Excellency the President, a COVID-19 guarantee facility structure is being developed in cooperation with the Islamic Development Bank to facilitate the mobilization of resources from the international market through guarantees. In this structure, ISEC will play the crucial role to facilitate direct and syndicated lines of trade finance and lines of SMEs finance in member countries. A special collaboration as well has been developed with the Islamic Solidarity Fund for Development to manage a $5 million grant supporting trade credit insurance operations in the least developed member countries for their COVID-19 related transactions. The grant is provided in the form of subsidies for insurance premiums or can be used as first loss tranche structured transactions. ISEC as well is working closely with its sister entity ITFC to support syndicated COVID-19 related trade finance business in our member countries. With the funding spreads spiking in the market, the ISEC cover will give more comfort to the private commercial banks and will make transactions commercially viable while elevating the financial burden of the member countries. As part of our continued and close engagement with our member countries to assess their medium and long-term requirement to combat the impact of COVID-19, ISEC will soon announce the additional pledge it will allocate under the R2 and R3 Restore and Restart package. Against this background, there is a clear need to keep trade and FDI flowing, both to ensure the supply of essential products and to send a signal of confidence to our member countries. We call upon our international partners to join our efforts in solidarity to support our member countries. The trade and FDI are the livelihood of the global economy, and we must do whatever is necessary to keep goods, services, and FDI flowing, in particular, those that are essential to the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. trade and FDI remain for the ITB Group highly essential to save both lives and livelihoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Osama Kesi, for sharing those words with us and for sharing with us what all initiatives you have launched during these uncertain times. I would like to move now to Dr. Abdul Wahab Al Saldoon to share his views. You are currently sharing the Saudi Arabia's P20 efforts, and as such, have a great overview over how the private sector responds to COVID-19. Could you please give us 3 to 4 key observations, please?
Yeah, by all means. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for inviting me to contribute to this panel. Maybe to set the stage for my intervention, I'd like to briefly present the B20, the mandate of the B20, and what does it represent, and when did it, when was it launched first. The B20 is one of the engagement group within the G20, which is the central platform for the international cooperation on financial and economic issues, and that was established back in 1999 in response to the Asian financial crisis in 1997. And the aim is to maintain financial and economic progress. The G20 countries account for more than 90% of the world GDP, also accounting for over 80% of the global trade, 2/3 of the world population. That really give it the weight and the influence on shaping the global direction when it comes to economic and financial matters. The year 2020 marks the year of Saudi Arabia's presidency of the G20 group, which is the first time a country from the Arab world chairing the G20 group and contributing to the policy recommendation related to the economic and social perspectives. Historically, the G20 deal with many social and economic crises in the past, including the 2008 financial meltdown, and all of this is through collaboration between the leading economies. B20 is again one of the 8 engagement group within Saudi Arabia's G20. It is the voice of the business, global business community. We have over 700 representatives from the G20 countries and beyond. And central to the mandate of the B20 is cooperation between the private sectors and the government in developing policy recommendations that are actionable and inclusive to drive economic and social growth. We've set several priorities and accordingly established task forces and action council addressing those priorities, which was the result of a very comprehensive methodology, including looking at all the think tanks, the Vision 2030 in Saudi Arabia. So we came up with 6 task forces and 1 action council. Those are the trade and investment, finance and infrastructure, energy sustainability and climate, digitalization, future of work and education, integrity and compliance, and last but not least, women in business, which is a signature topic within the Saudi Arabia B20 mission. Among all those 6 and 7 task forces and action council, as SMEs and the DSGs are cross-cutting themes for all the task forces. And back to the COVID-19 and your questions, I would like to describe it as an unprecedented and extraordinary issue. Unlike the 2008, though the 2008 and the current crisis have both led to global economic recession, the financial crisis back in 2008 was largely a man-made failure in part of the financial system, driven by human sentiment that leveraged fault line in the system. And as such, the collapse was predictable and hence, it could be remedied by addressing the underlying causes. By contrast, the COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent crisis is a consequence of a complexly woven ecological, social, and economic system. It threatened to undo the progress the world has made on various sustainable development goals. Data that we have at present on the impact on human and economic health is truly ascertain that the crisis is indeed unprecedented and extraordinary. And it is, as such, no surprise that the risk management and disaster preparedness system and protocol usually put in place by business, fell short of the scale of the impact. In our opinion, addressing a global crisis of that scale, require agility in the decision-making and the policy adaptation based on the feedback loop, both in terms of short-term and long-term. In the case of the long-term, this need to also take into consideration the challenges for both the individual countries and global multilateral bodies like the G20 and in this case, the IsDB in addressing those challenges. And as His Excellency, the chairman of the IsDB mentioned in his opening remark, it represents a rare opportunity to take those radical
Sorry, Dr. Abdul Wahab?
ones.
We can hear you now.
Sorry?
We can hear you now.
Okay.
We can hear you now.
Okay, so the COVID-19 has devastated the world, resulting in millions of infected people, hundreds of thousands of deaths, as well as the ramification from the economic perspective. However, the business, whether it is small, big, or local, or multinational, has, in our opinion, risen to the challenge. So amidst all the chaos and the pessimism that we had heard, there are many examples of resilience and agility in responding to this global pandemic. What we think is appropriate and critical is repurposing the production and the R&D capabilities. And this has already been seen. We've seen many companies changing their production line to cater for the demand for ventilators. The automakers, for instance, had raced to make ventilators. Hotel had turned into hospital. And those are only a couple of examples of the response of the private sector to the pandemic. In essence, crises of that scale require worldwide collaboration and innovation to combat the virus and work toward a global recovery. Another key observation that we had noticed also is the sheer global scale at which the private sector has stepped up and joined forces to both fund and support the research and development. There are several global funds that had been launched, including the one launched by the WHO. Many companies had contributed to local funds within their countries to support the governments in combating the virus and its impact. So as the economies reopen, the private sector across all sectors, take every measure, guided by the government on the health issues, making the workplace safe, and the consumption of product and services as well safe. And beside that, the private sector is adapting to new realities, by redesigning business model. Many people are working from homes and without impacting on the productivity and the business of their corporate or companies. So this is accelerating, in fact, the adoption of the digital technologies, increasing localization and reorganizing of the global value chain. In our case, in Saudi Arabia, as a B20, we've responded by, drafting and sending open letter to the G20 leader with a clear roadmap on what are the things that need to be done to jumpstart the economy during the crisis and post the crisis. Also, we had several initiatives related to addressing issues from a health perspective. There's a joint statement with the WHO on issues related to trade and the need to avoid any protectionism. We had a couple of joint statements with the WTO and the ICC. So in a nutshell, I would like to maybe conclude by highlighting a report that we had released yesterday, which is entitled Jumpstarting the Global Economy in a Post-COVID Phase, which lay out consideration, from a private sector perspective for how can we effectively navigate the pandemic going forward. And there are 6 recommendations aligning perfectly with the mandate of the B20. Just to give you a flavor, some of those recommendations include the need to build the health resilience, by accelerating the development and availability of the COVID vaccine, strengthening the future pandemic preparedness, and opposing any trade restriction on medical and product services. Secondly, is safeguarding human capital by avoiding restriction on movement of human and minimizing unemployment and firing people. Thirdly, and most importantly, we should also prevent financial instability by identifying and minimizing unintended negative economic and financial spillover. And last is we should unlock the global supply chain. This is very critical in our opinion. And while the vaccine to the virus is the ultimate health goal, at the same time, it's imperative to identify how the private and public sector can cooperate to create an environment that instills safety and confidence while advancing economic prosperity and avoid a global depression.
Thank you, Dr. Abdul Wahab Saldoon, for sharing your views and sharing on what Saudi Arabia is doing during this current time and how the private sector is playing an important role right now. I would like to move on to Engineer Hani Sambol. I would like to ask you, could you please explain how global trade is impacted by COVID-19 outbreak and the importance of trade in reviving the economy? How is ITFC dealing with these issues during the different phases of response and recovery?
Thank you very much. Is my voice clear here?
It's very clear.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, I would like to start by saying also thank you for really having this very important, timely webinar. And I'm sure that also the respected speakers before me, actually, they have shed some light on the impact of the COVID on the global economy. And I would like here maybe to set the scene by also focusing actually on the COVID-19 on the global. As you all know, it's to say that the virus or the coronavirus, is having really a considerable impact on the economy and society, and as described by the respected speakers as unprecedented. The outlook of the global economy over the next 2 years, actually, as they said, remains highly uncertain. It is also difficult to predict actually the shape of the recovery over the coming period, whether it's going to be a V shape or W shape or L shape. It is difficult to say now. Maybe we have to wait until we see the real impact, in the coming 2 quarters. As we can see that also reduced global domestic demand affected trade and also the prices of strategic commodities greatly. In addition to as I said, the collapse of the economies and also the contractions of the GDPs. We also have we have seen also things that is related to trade, which is the cancellation of travel and air cargo flights. We have also noticed the cost and time increased for shipments. Shipping containers restricted because of the very strict controls and measures, which actually led to a shortage of supplies as well. So lockdown impacted the availability of labor also, those labors which is really required to load and unload the ships. Additional safety measures, they delayed also receiving the supplies and the goods, especially food. So the spread of the new virus in public health crisis is a public health crisis, and in fact poses a serious risk also to the macroeconomy through the stop in production activities, the interruptions of people's movements, and cut off supply chains. The overall global economy is actually attacked, as said previously, on multiple fronts through the full lockdown of many of the world's leading economies. For manufacturing, disruptions have hindered supply chain forces, actually factories to close all over the world. From a demand perspective, while demand stays high in essential goods, and here I mean by medical equipments and health supplies, not to forget the service sectors, where the service sectors has been really severely hit, actually, during the COVID crisis in the first 2 quarters, especially tourism and travel, hospitality, and the situation is getting worse also for unemployment. In fact, the economists, I don't want to be so pessimistic, but the economists are warning about the possibility of global recession actually caused by COVID-19. So I think we're talking about how do we see it, the volume of global trade. We know that it is shrunk by 3% in the first quarter in 2020. And the initial estimates for the second quarter indicates also a drop of around 18.5%. These declines are historically large, but could have been even worse. So in light of this uncertainty and the severity of the pandemic, on the impact, the economists have looked at 2 scenarios. The first one is actually the most optimistic scenario for trade, where they see the volume of trade, world trade in 2020 would contract by 13%. And the second scenario, which is the most pessimistic one, where the world trade will fall by 32% by the end of actually 2020. As things currently stands, as we see it today, hopefully things are still on track. Trade would only actually need to grow by 2.5% per quarter for the remainder of the year to meet actually the optimistic projections. Looking ahead into 2021, adverse development, including the second wave of the second wave of COVID-19, could see, la samhallah, trade expansions fall short of an aerial projections. So therefore, as said also by His Excellency Mr. Abdul Wahab, the policy decisions are very important and will continue to play an important role in determining the pace of economic recovery in the future. For trade, in my view, actually to rebound strongly in the coming years, fiscal and monetary and trade policies will all need to be kept pulling in the same direction. Okay, as for ITFC, as the rest of the group, actually, from the first day, we've had one thing in mind. We said we need to keep serving member countries and also to keep enhancing the intra-OIC trade. However, we felt that there is a need actually to adapt actually to the new ways of doing business and relying more on digitization. We need actually to align again with what is happening in the world and revisiting our strategies so that at least we can see a model that will fit the new requirements in the future. We would like, of course, to tell you that we have been really working hard with our partners, really to keep things moving from our joint programs, but focusing on the COVID-19 programs, partners like the Badia OFID, Africa Exim Bank, and also with UN agencies and commissions like the African Commission for Trade, actually to implement the joint programs, as I said, and also special ones for COVID-19. We will make all possible efforts, actually, in ITFC to see that we are really turning the challenges into opportunities. And I mean that by really looking at new markets and, of course, new opportunities, focus on important sectors like the health sector, and also enhance integrated programs where you see trade finance and trade development joined together. We also are focusing on providing solutions, and solutions I mean here by innovative solutions. So what did we do? We had two packages. The first one is the 300 million rapid response initiative, where we are actually immediately assisting member countries to acquire their strategic commodities and also to support the private sector in responding to the crisis, especially and minimizing the impact on SMEs to sustain economic development. The other package is the 550 million recovery response program, which is actually also a program where we are joining trade finance and trade development that will help member countries in relaunching their economies. This is in top, of course, actually to the almost $5 billion normal trade finance pipeline that was already set for 2020. I also would like to say that we felt that also high-level virtual meetings, consultations with major clients was very important because they needed technical assistance and they needed programs and capacity building. And ITFC actually have really implemented a number of very important programs during the COVID-19 for many countries. I can give you some examples here. For example, for Maldives, we have been providing medical kits. For Kyrgyzia, we have been supporting the emergency needs to have really more food supplies. For Benin, we supported the procurement of medical and medicine for the Ministry of Health. For Senegal, we have provided testing kits and laboratories. We provided capacity building to a very important institute called the Pasteur Institute in Senegal. We have done a lot of work in Burkina Faso in the same way in providing laboratories, equipments. Palestine, we have provided for the Palestinians medical equipment, masks. And for Tajikistan, we have provided medical equipment, kits. Afghanistan, food supplies. Also, we have supported the Arab Tourism Organization to really do some capacity work. Regional countries in West Africa, we have done a webinar which is attended by 10,000 people. This is on medical protocols actually for French and English speaking countries. In Africa, Tunisia, Sudan, and the list is long. However, I would like really to conclude by saying that we are very keen actually to see that tomorrow is going to be brighter than today. And that's why for trade to continue to really to flow, we need to acknowledge that trade is actually playing a very important role in the recovery phase. Especially, we need to really look into how to facilitate more on the trade, especially in challenging times like this one. Also, there are opportunities, as was said, but we need actually to remove barriers, which we have started to see right now in the markets. We need to bridge actually digital divide, which is so important, especially for least developed member countries. More relaxation is needed and to avoid really more protectionism and to open borders. And more importantly, we need to decrease actually the trade tensions. Overall, the confidence is very important, so that we need to boost confidence in trade and global markets and keep global supply chains going, especially for essential goods. Avoid actually export restrictions on essential goods. To conclude, I would like to say that we need to look into the positive side of the coin. And now that the current crisis offers an opportunities to develop actually readiness for future, la samahallah, pandemics. And the only way we should really continue to build, as I said, confidence to ensure the availability of supplies in the market and build capacities for the management of future crises. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Engineer Hanif Umbil, for sharing your views with us. It is very evident that trade is an important factor for economic recovery of a country. and for the efforts which you have been putting in and the initiatives which you have launched. We can clearly see it's going to hold fruits ahead. Now, I would like to move ahead to Mr. Ayman Sijini. Mr. Ayman Sijini, can you hear us?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you very well. Thank you very much. But for some reason, I cannot open the video from my side. If you could do so, from your side, that would be great.
Let me do that from my side. Okay, look, I'll get back to the video aspect, but I can hear you clearly, so we'll move ahead with the question which I have for you.
Excellent. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wa salatu wa-salam ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be on this very high-level webinar, and we're definitely excited to give you a quick overview of who we are as ICB and what activities we've been doing for the COVID-19. Islamic Cooperation for the Development of the Private Sector is more or less supporting in 55 member countries, and we are basically have created a response pack of $250 million for the COVID-19. The channels that we do is through 5 different direct channels. One of them is the PPP, Public-Private Partnership and Term Financing, that can help the healthcare and the electrical power generation and agriculture business. The second way for us to support all the member countries is through the issuance of sukuk for those particular projects, electrical power or generation of electrician that is green electrician generation or healthcare business. Third, what we do is also private equity and investments directly, of which we focus into healthcare, agriculture and financial institutions and insurances. And then we go also into asset management of funds. But yet also our biggest focus is through our network of 100 plus financial institutions through which we provide SME financing. And the SME financing more or less gets to be done through us providing line of finance to those financial institutions. And we ask them to specifically focus into COVID-19 requirements or SMEs. And it's been working really excellent because the banks that we deal with, some of them we have ownership in, some of them they're part of our network, but they are on the ground. They know exactly what is needed. They meet with the clients, and it moves very fast when that happens, when you have on-the-ground capabilities. Last but not least, our treasury does invest into purchasing and selling of sukuk. In this way, we support also the global debt capital markets to evolve and help in this particular times. So this is in the lump sum. Again, it is extremely important for us to be fast and supportive of our member countries during these times. And we continue monitoring it very closely. We're in constant contact with all the managing directors of the financial institutions that we have in our network. And we're closely listening to their needs, listening to their way of their governments, how they are reacting to the COVID-19 through the financial institution. So for example, sometimes you will find some countries requiring 6 months delay in repayments from clients of our financial institutions. In this way, there is a restructuring that might be needed, or we provide the line of finance in a structure that helps the SMEs the best. This is basically in a summary of what we are doing right now in ICD. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ayman Sijini. Thank you so much for sharing the initiatives which you have launched during this time, especially on the Islamic sukuk issuance side. Actually, we were supposed to go through the audience Q&A, but since we are running short on time, I will be sharing these questions with the ISDB group, and the responses will be sent to you via email. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, we bring the webinar to a close. Once again, we would like to express our heartfelt thank you to all our speakers and also to ISDBG for holding this webinar. We would also we'll also be sharing the video recording and a short survey through email. Thank you everyone for participating, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you so much to all our speakers for participating.
Thanks.
Thank you.